Good evening, everyone. This is the Sam Oxer Jr. Show coming to you from Frederick, Maryland. And I promise you tonight we're going to have a great show. Before we get into Tommy Ivo, this was done about 10 or 12 years ago. But anyway, Tommy's going to be listening tonight, so it ought to be good. So, but anyway, I want to bring up one thing. I don't know how many of you are NASCAR fans, but I am a big NASCAR fan. But I don't know if any of you seen the Xfinity race last Friday night, right? But anyway, they had Joe Gibbs' grandson, Ty Gibbs. Okay, boy is a good driver. He's about 5 foot tall. He's a real small guy, but a great driver, and he's won some races. But anyway, end of race is coming up. We're going on the last lap, and he gets tangled up with Sam Mayers. And I don't have to tell you, this was the fight of the year, I think, because both of them are not very big. But anyway, uh, Ty Gibbs, for whatever reason, I don't know what he was thinking, but I guess he has some anger issues in this world. But he wound up ran into the back of Sam Mayer's car after the flag. In other words, it was a worthless crash. So he runs in, destroys the front of his car, and but anyway, so they come back around, they line up for inspection, and Sam gets out of the car and comes up to Ty and starts saying, what's wrong? What are you doing? All that stuff. But this was so funny. The two of them got into a fight. Now, Ty Gibbs had brains enough to keep his helmet on, but Sam Merritt did not have that uh, in his mind to take his leave his helmet on, so he took his helmet off before he got up to him. So anyway, I didn't think that little guy could scrap that crazy, but he sure did. But anyway, NASCAR fined him. Joe, and this is Joe Gibbs's grandson. NASCAR fined Joe Gibbs' son Ty $15,000 for the crazy act of doing that. But it was it's. I'm sure you can still find it on YouTube under NASCAR, and it's worth taking a look at it. It's funny, and the two of them fighting each other was the smallest fight in the world. But Ty threw in some good licks, gave Sam Mayer a black eye. But anyway, it was funny. If you got time, go there, take a look at it, and see what's happening. But anyway, tonight's show, we're going to have a re-air of a show that I did back, I think, near as I can figure. I did this in 2010 with Tommy Ivo, and he's actually listening to it tonight. I wasn't able to get a hold of him quick enough to where I could send him a link and get him on the show. But anyway, he's listening, and we'll see how bad we can screw it up. And but anyway, it's just so you know, Jim Amos had recorded every show I had done 2009 to 2011. So it's quite a, you know, that he recorded all this. Now, that's approximately 160 shows. So, which is a lot of them. So anyway, we got, of course, we got Ivo, we got Shirley Madani, David Pearson, Dick Brannon, Buddy Martin, Larry Dixon, Tom McEwen. Uh, we got Joe Amato, Kenny Youngblood, Gas Ronda. I mean, we got a list of super good shows. I might put them on Facebook and see if we can figure out what we can maybe do um, in the future. I'm not going to do all of them, not again. But anyway, there's about 3 or 4 per night on these lists, and they're very difficult to edit because editing is because I can't really, I can hear it, but I can't see it visually. So it takes a long time to edit one of these out. But anyway, coming up, and then afterwards, I'll say a couple things and we'll go from there. So let me see if I can start this thing. Hopefully, it will work like it's supposed to, but Lord only knows. We'll see. See what happens here. Let me give it a shot. We're also, Lou Santiago was also a co-host on this show. So anyway, let's see what we got. Make sure it has sound and all that good stuff. So let's hit it.
Asking them, let Sam take it over. I want to know how you hooked up those 4 nail heads. That's what I want to know.
Very carefully. No, we started out. I had a single engine Buick car, right. And they limited us to gasoline. Okay.
Right.
So when we ran out of horsepower with that car, the only way that we could make more horsepower was to put 2 engines in a car. And that was the biggest step, was to go to 2 motors, to get on to running a multi-engine car. Once I did that, then I could have put 10 engines in the car, and it didn't make any difference. But with that 4-engine car, we put 2 engines in the car in line and hooked them together, crankshaft to crankshaft, right, with a chain coupler, which in essence made it a V16. And we ran the back, we had them in the car forward, and we hooked it up to the differential, and we ran that just like a regular twin motor inline car. Then we took 2 other motors, hooked them together again at the crankshaft, and made another V16 out of it, and put them in the car backwards.
Man.
Which then ran... I'll tell you, I wasn't just throwing a bunch of motors in the car. It was a plumber's nightmare trying to get this thing all going.
Oh, I can imagine.
What did you use for whenever you connected the 2 motors together? Was each motor driving a wheel, or was it?
No.
It was one axle in front, one axle in back.
Yeah, we had if you just picture a regular inline twin car, there were 2 motors sitting together in line. They were hooked crankshaft to crankshaft. We had an industrial chain coupler so that the chassis flexed it didn't put a lot of pressure on the main bearings, because of the 2 motors. So it was a V16, and it went to a differential, which was offset to one side in the back of the car, and that would drive the 2 rear wheels. So if the power failed, in fact, no 2 cylinders put out the same amount of horsepower. You don't get exactly 60 horsepower out of each cylinder. You might get 65 out of one and 55 out of another, but it doesn't make any difference. So like I say, if one put out 100 horsepower more than the other, it really didn't make any difference. It was introducing 800 horsepower into the drive line anyway. But where the trick came in was when we wanted to drive we had to drive all 4 wheels. It couldn't stand the horsepower of all that weight going to one set of wheels. We took the second set of motors and turned them around backwards in the car, which was a V16, and it drove a differential on the front. Now, that differential on the front, they made those for the Novi Indy cars years ago. What we did, we took the ring gear on one side of the differential and put it on the other, which made it drive backwards, which was then forward. So we had one set of wheels driving backwards, one set of wheels driving forward, and it all worked out the way it was supposed to. And then we had to use a Jeep front wheel drive wheels, their joints up there. But Mickey Thompson, who was a friend of mine, he had his 4-engine car that he ran at Bonneville. And he says, don't put those Jeep knuckles in there. They won't take it. You're going to have to use you ain't going to like the weight, but you're going to have to use a 1-ton truck. And that's what we did. And it was really an odd deal. What was really strange about the whole deal, but it worked. It worked. What was really strange about the whole deal was when you were sitting there idling and you would gun the motor, rev the motor up. You know how a normal car rocks from side to side when you do that?
Right.
Well, with this one here, we had one set of motors running forward and one backward, so they were both pulling out to the side and sort of grabbing the ground. And when you'd gun the motor, you could feel it surge up and down back in the driver's seat. It didn't come off the ground, it just surged. But you could feel it doing it. It was really strange. But it worked.
It was almost like the torque was neutralizing itself.
That's what was happening. So we did that for a purpose. Because these inline twin cars, when they'd run down through there and they'd lift on the throttle at the finish line, it would want to steer to the other side when all the torque went from one way to the other. Yeah. So we thought, wow, with all these motors doing that wouldn't be too good. Right. So with them, the torque changing identically, the car just kept going straight. So we found that out. We did that with the twin motor car.
Tommy, hold on a minute. We're going to take a break, and we're going to be right back. And we got a lot more questions for you. A lot more. The more we talk to you, the more questions we got. So this is the Sam Auction.
Hey, this is the Sam Auction Jr. Show with Sam Auction and Lou Santiago, and our special guest tonight is TV Tommy Ivo. We're talking about his 4-engine Buick wagon that he built. Tommy, tell us some more about that Buick.
Well, I tell you, it was kind of an odd thing. Just as I got that running, as I told you before, they had it limited to gasoline for the cars only, trying to slow them down.
Right.
So just as I got this thing going, I acted in pictures for quite a while, for 20 years. Made about 100 movies, couple of 100 television shows. I was in the movies before they even had television. That's why all my buddies tell me my last name, Ivo, is perfect. It stands for I'm very old. With friends like that, you don't need any enemies. But in any case, we got that 4-motor car running, and I was doing a series called Margie about teenagers in the roaring 20s in 61 and 62. Right. And I told them that I did a little drag racing when I started the series, and they thought, well, it's better he runs his Cadillac on the track than it is to, be racing around on the streets. So they never said anything until Hot Rod got the bright idea of taking a picture of the car for the cover, which they did, of Hot Rod magazine on the set. So we took that thing down to the set, and they looked at it, and they said, you're all done. You ain't driving this thing anymore. So my good friend that I had out here used to paint my cars for me. He was a really good car painter, and his name was Don Perdone. And he was my pal, so he drove the car. And that was his first professional driving race, and I paid him $25 a race to drive the car. You think inflation has struck, or what?
Oh, man.
And I'm telling you, he paid his dues, because when we'd go out of town to race the car, of course, we'd both stop in a motel somewhere.
Right.
And he'd go in to take a shower. And I'm a terrible practical joker. And I took a shampoo and I dumped it out and put 10-weight motor oil in there. And he went in there and poured it in his hair. And the more water he added to it, the more it turned to axle grease. And he was furious.
Man.
I don't think he's forgotten that stuff till this day. He still growls at me when I walk by him.
And you're still alive to tell about it.
Yeah. And so, but with the 4-motor car, that came out just as they switched back to fuel again. So I didn't want to go out. They said you can run it on single runs, but there's really not a class for it, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go racing with the big boys with the fuel cars. So that's when I switched over to fuel because, you know, I had 36 cars in 12 different classes over a 30-year period. Man. Everything from roadsters to 1-motor, 2 motors, 4 motors, fuel cars, funny cars, jet cars. Boy, it was just a picnic. Every year we'd drive home, you know, from the prior season, and say, oh boy, what are we going to build next year? You know. So I sold a 4-motor car because again I wanted to go fuel racing. And as the years went on, it was in the dragster version, and then the guy that bought it from me, Tom McCurry, had that hand-formed aluminum body put on it and made it into the Wagon Master because funny cars were getting so popular. And it's still in that configuration out here in a museum nowadays.
Wow. Right. That's so cool. So, you know, we know that you're a practical joker, and Sam just didn't have the chutzpah to ask about this. So what's this deal about the Golden Greek? What's the deal with that? I want to hear this story.
The Golden Greek? Oh, yeah. You know, he's kind of a mafia type guy, you know, not really, but he comes from Cicero, Chicago, and don't be poking him with sticks, you know. And I was racing at one time at a racetrack, and I beat him. And we got down to the other end, and I pulled out, I had taken a little shop rag and stuffed it into my fire suit because he was complaining about the lights. So I took it out at the other end after I beat it and handed it to him and say, here, Chris, here's a crying towel for you. And he reached into the truck, into the glove box, and pulled out a .45 and says, I got your crying towel for you here. And that's the last time I pestered him any.
Yeah, talk about poking the bear.
Oh, my God.
We went to Hawaii racing one time.
What was that? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
We went to Hawaii racing one time with McEwen.
Right. Yeah.
And so I got keys to all the motel rooms when we got there, hotel rooms when we got there. And so the first night we were there, I snuck in, turned on his radio to the local bebop station at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock in the morning, doop boop, doop bop, the radio goes off, and he came out of that bed like someone threw a pail of cold water on him. So the following night, he was going to make sure nothing went wrong, checked out his radio, everything was fine, except I took the radio out of my room, put it in the drawer, and ran the cord out the back of the drawer where he couldn't see it. 2 o'clock in the morning, it goes off again. So the following night, he says, well, he's going to make sure, and he gave that room a spreadsheet inspection to make sure there was nothing wrong, except we had wired yet another radio into the air conditioning system. At 2 o'clock in the morning, that went off. And, you know, those bits run up and down the whole floor, so we could hear it as good in our room as he could in his. And we were rolling around on the floor laughing ourselves to death.
Okay, here's the title.
McEwen comes down beating on my door. And I shouldn't have opened the door, but I had to see what the look on his face was. And boy, did he show me the look on his face. He grabbed me. We were on the 15th floor. Walked over to the window and hung me out over the balcony and told me he was going to drop me if I put any more radios in the room. I left him be for the rest of the race, too.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Man.
But, you know, we raced so much. We would leave in March, and we wouldn't come home till November. I run over 100 races every year. Now, that's where I got on to running. I had a big truck that I had 2 dragsters side by side with, and then we put a Corvette up on the top of the whole thing to use as a push car at the racetrack because we were still running steel motors, so we couldn't fix them in between rounds like they did here.
Right.
And I ran 8 times in 1 week was my record. I ran on Sunday afternoon at Atco, New Jersey, and Philadelphia, and then drove up and ran that night at Englishtown, New Jersey. We ran the wheels off of them things, But of course, we weren't leaning on them as bad as they are nowadays. But
No.
it was, each car had its own thing that was great, because my favorite was sitting behind the motor, because with those zooming headers, you'd have these two big pillars of flame alongside the motor, and the supercharger was in front of you, and the breathers would be breathing a little condensation out of them. And when you jump on it, like Youngblood was talking about, and it would smoke the tires from one end to the other. When you were running at Long Beach on a Saturday night, the flames would go up into that smoke, and it'd turn all different colors of yellow and red. Those were the roaring 60s. And we'd say,
yeah.
Far out, man, look at that. And then when you got in front of the motor, the ground rush, we only picked up about 10, 15 miles an hour in speed. But when you don't have the motor, the motor is like when you go to bed at night and pull the covers up around your neck. It feels all nice and secure,
Right.
But out in front, the ground rush got so strong that it felt like you picked up on 100 miles an hour. And that was a pretty good thrill with a 250-mile-an-hour go-kart, And then like the funny car, then you were back to the short wheelbase, but it darted all over the track, so that was a lot of fun, too. But the Jets cars were actually the most awesome thing that I ever drove, because they would run 300 miles an hour. The regular cars could only run about 240, 50 miles an hour, the piston-driven cars. So although at that time it took us 6 seconds to go from 0 to 300, now when they were running the quarter mile, it took them 4 seconds to go from 0 to 300. Well, that jet engine didn't charge off the line. It was pushing air. So we couldn't run 150 in the 8-speed. We could run 300 in the quarter, whereas these guys, they can run 260 miles, 70 miles an hour in an 8.
Right.
So we had to pick it up somewhere, but boy, on the top end, when that thing started packing wind, I'm sure you could turn the wheel sideways and it'd just keep going straight. So each thing, it was just a brand new adventure. That's what was so much fun about the thing,
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, Tommy. You were 100 movies plus 200 TV shows. You don't seem like the mechanical person that we would think of,
Yeah.
But did you do this at home, or did you have a shop, or what? Where was your mechanical ability that came from?
Well, I'm of German descent, and the Germans seem to be kind of mechanically inclined, and I think that's what it was. That had a lot to do with it. In my bicycle, I used to take it all the time apart, and anything that ticked around the house, I'd take apart and put back together again. It was just kind of a natural thing. And when I got my first car when I was 16 years old, of course, off to the drag strip we went, and we were off and running. But I built all that up until my second fuel car. All of those cars, that 4-motor car, the twin-motor car, I built them all in a 2-car garage here at my house. And, it just, finally the cars got so long I couldn't shut the door down, so then I had to build the shop around back. But I live in the same house now that I did when I bought it when I was 12 years old with my movie money.
That's what I was going to ask you, yeah.
No way. It's a very nice neighborhood, and I bought it for $12,000. It's worth $1.25 million now.
Right.
We've added 3,000 feet onto it. It's 4,000 feet instead of 1,000 now. But I parked my CTS right in the garage where I built my 4-motor car, and that's kind of a nice memory. All those areas.
That's very cool.
And who helped you? Who was your help to put this thing together? I mean,
well,
them, not just the 4-engine thing.
Well, we all pick up things from everybody. There's a guy called Max Belchowski. Have you heard his name before? He's from a long way back. He used to be a road racer guy. He had a car called Old Yeller, and it was just an ugly thing, but it had a Buick motor in it, and it ran really good. And he was kind of a Buick guy. I had a little T Roadster. I was putting a Buick motor in, so I went down to talk to him to find out how to run Buicks. And so I'd pick up things here and there, but I did all my own work on the car. If the motor fell apart, I was the guy that had to live with it. But everybody that came by, they would, they'd get roped into washing pistons and everything else. I'd give them a couple of war stories while we were doing it. And them darn guys, I'm telling you, when nature called, they just step right outside the door and take care of things. And it started smelling like a urinal out there. And I told them, go all the way back to the back of the property, would you please? And of course, they didn't bother doing it. So I had a Model T coil that put out a whole bunch of voltage, but no amperage. And I took some chicken wire and put it right alongside the garage there. And when they go outside, I says, go to the back of the property. And I turned on that T coil because the chicken wire was held off the ground with some little wood pegs. And they completed the circuit if they went there. And it would electrocute them. And that was the last time they did that, I'll tell you. My practical jokes got a little strong on me.
Oh, my God.
We were over to England racing. And they had a big letter L that they would put on cars when they were learners. Mm-hmm. It was in a green circle with a white letter L. And so we found that out. So we went down to what their DMV was there and picked up a couple of those and went out to the races. This is when I was racing Garlits over in England, and put that big learner sign on the side of his car. And when he saw it, I was looking across the pits and this small atomic bomb cloud went up in the air. Alex was not a practical joke guy. He would get so upset with it. And of course, that would just stir the pot, and I'd just do it even more.
Oh, my God.
But it kept things going. It kept it all alive. We had time to do it. That's the sad part nowadays. When you put money into it, it gets so doggone serious that these guys don't have the fun we used to have. We'd go out and race. We'd go race 8 cars, and then when we left the track, we'd go take over a restaurant somewhere,
Right.
And it was the time of Mom Apple Pie and the American flag and just about everything we did in those days.
God, yes.
I think a lot of it is now. It's just become so corporate. You know what I mean? That's most of it now.
Yeah, that's what kind of discouraged me out of a lot of it. I drove the car, tuned the car, built the car, got the sponsors, booked the dates. You could do all of that in those days. Of course, it took up my time completely.
Right.
What was odd, you were talking about the movies before. If I picked up mechanical things there,
right?
No, I was just the opposite. I was about 115 pounds soaking wet. And when I was a kid, I always played orphans and cripples. And then as I got older, I'd always play 10-thumbed bumbling boyfriends. My name in the Margie show was Haywood Botts. That's kind of self-explanatory, isn't it?
Right.
So I'd go there and I'd play this goofy guy that couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time, and then I'd go out and drive my 200-mile-an-hour race car on the weekend. Talk about a Superman Clark Kent deal. That was about it.
Hold on, Tommy.
Well, when you were on when you were at the drag strip, like in the movies, the show must go on. Well, in drag racing, the racing must go on. And when I first got my twin motor car going, we had just put it together finished putting it together the night before, and we put kind of a temporary body on it. And on a run, actually, we were the first to run in the 8-second bracket on gas, and we were making a backup run. and the body fell off, and it hit the ground, spun around, and cut my Achilles tendon in two. So that's kind of a serious thing. You know, they had to reach up there and pull it back down, sew it together, but it didn't heal right away. Boy, it really hurt for quite some time. So it was my clutch foot that had cut the Achilles tendon on. So in order to drive, I could push in the gas, but I couldn't push in the clutch. Now, on that twin motor car, we had the rear end, the differential, offset to one side, because how we made that car run, we had two motors side by side. One ran regular, and the other one ran backwards. And we meshed the two starter ring gears together. Don't sell your starter ring gears short. They're really strong. They transferred the power from one side to the other. Then we went off an offset differential rear end. So since my legs weren't hanging off with the rear end in between them, it was off to one side, I just switched feet. And I pushed the gas with my left foot, or with the opposite foot, and the clutch with the other. And that worked great till I came up to make my first race, and the light went off, and I whipped out the clutch, or whipped out the gas and pushed in the clutch and says, no, it's the other feet, and switched them again. Luckily, the guy I was racing was running quite a bit slower, and I drove by him anyway. But the show must go on. Whatever it takes to improvise, that's what you will do, you know.
That's great. Now, I know we got about 3 minutes left. What we got a new book coming out, right?
Yeah. We finally got all this stuff together. Tom Cotter got a hold of me, and you know, the problem wasn't having enough stuff for the book. It was weeding through it, because all the movie stuff is in there as well. You know, because I did that from when I was 3 years old till I was 26, and then the racing thing, and with all the various cars that we have, we've got it just all in there. And of course, we've got one practical joke after another. You know, we've all got a little livens up the reading a little bit.
That's right. Now, what I want to do, what Lou doesn't know, but me and Lou want to do, is to have Tom Cotter and you both back on whenever the book is just about to come out.
Sure, that would be fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be, you know.
See, I have so many pictures. When I was in the movies, my mother used to run around and collect all these stills from when the movies, when they would come out. So I got tuned to that. So whenever I was racing, I always had a camera in my hand. And I've got tens of thousands of pictures to go through. I've got a picture when Perdone went on tour with me, of the two of us leaving on tour, just a couple of kids, you know. So it's really vintage stuff, and I was really glad I had it, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool.
I bet you have so much of it. It's incredible. That's not been seen, you know.
Oh, yeah. We had one run one time, engine exploded, threw some shrapnel through a tire, run me upside down and backwards through the lights at Pomona at the Winter Nationals at 240 miles an hour. That thing hit the guardrail and came apart like a $2 watch, and I didn't get a scratch out of the thing. It killed the car. And we got some great pictures of that.
That's wild.
Put your stuff together, you know.
Yeah. Well, we only got about 30 seconds. Tommy, we really appreciate you being here tonight. You're always a great interview, and we'll have you and Tom Cotter back whenever the book comes out, and I really look forward to that. And Tom's a great interview also. So the two of you together, I think, will just be fantastic, you know. So wish you all the best, and here comes our music to get off the air. So thank you, Tommy. And this has been the Sam Locksher Jr. Show.
All right, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed that. It was a great interview with Tommy. And Tommy, I hope he got on line to hear his own interview. I'll call him in a little bit. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. It's fun going back to the days. And like I said, I'll probably put these 2 pages of interviews. It's over 160 of them. And like I said, I don't think we'll do 160 of them, but we certainly can get 1 or 2 more of them on here that maybe could turn out to be I don't know if they'll be as good as TV Tommy, but we'll see what we can do. Anyway, all right. Thank everyone. And again, everyone can pick it up if they missed it. It airs for the next 10 years. Now it'll air over and over again. So anyway, hope you all enjoyed it, and we shall pick it up again next week. Thank you very much. Say good night.